broke my will, but what a thrill. Goodness gracious, great balls of fire.
You're listening to Where You Live with Gene Sullivan.
Welcome back to Where You Live. We're broadcasting from the Natural Green Lawn and Land Care Studios. We're brought to you by Extreme Exteriors and American Family Insurance, the Kim Bennett Agency. Before we get back into our story about what's happening in the state of Washington with the wisdom of the state legislature there, I'd like to let our listeners know we've got a free gift for you. We have a bi-monthly newsletter that we would like to start sending to you. A lot of what we talk about on the show, we go in further detail. People who are on the show are also writers for this newsletter. It's yours free. Give us a call at New Concepts during the week at 952-922-2500. Ask for Lori, and she'll make sure that you start receiving it electronically or by mail. If you're just joining us, we're talking about the state of Washington. In the last minute here, the legislature had two new laws concerning homeowner associations. One is in how homeowner associations can govern themselves when it comes to speed limit enforcement in their private property, on their private roads. And the other is how what constitutes an official notice for a meeting. And we're going to talk about that other one here in a moment. But again, the state legislature said, you know what? We've got 4 rules, 4 conditions that have to be met. We've talked about that first one. The first one is the board of directors must get together each and every time to discuss every infraction before a violation letter is issued, before a warning is sent out, before a fine is sent out. And I really said, why? Is that really necessary? If this same person who got voted on the board voted for and ran for the city council, and they would have the authority at the city council level that they don't in their homeowners association. They have no level of difference in terms of their ability to govern. And I would venture to say most people who sign on and become new legislators, new city council members, brand new congressmen, brand new senators, guess what? They don't come with experience in how to write laws and how to govern, but we have always treated that we are everyone that we're dealing with as adults. And we've had this thing called the consent of the governed. If the majority of the people in that area have promoted someone and had said, we want you to represent us, that person was fit as long as they were an adult and of a certain age. And so, you know what? I think it's unnecessary here. I think it is just meddling on the state legislators' part, saying what they're really saying to the HOA members are, you don't know how to govern yourselves. We do. I don't know why they think it comes natural for them and nobody else. But then the other part of this is they could not declare a speed limit not lower than 20 miles per hour. And I'm just thinking, really? Do you have to be that specific as well? It's not enough that you're making them get together each and every time, but now they don't even have the ability to say we would rather have the speed limit at 15 miles an hour. And couldn't that make a little bit more sense? I mean, after all, we're talking about a private road, not a city road. So we have different conditions, different widths. We have more tighter areas. Visibility might be not as good as it is on a city street. And because of that, can't people actually govern themselves and say we want a speed limit of 15 miles an hour, 10 miles an hour? But no, the state legislature felt a need to have to even put in a limit. I mean, come on. Are we talking about a parental role here that the Washington legislature is taking that is really unnecessary? Well, let's take a look at some of the other conditions. What are those? Number 2, it says that there needs to be a written agreement regarding speed enforcement. Okay? And this must be signed by the association president and the chief law enforcement official of the city or county where it resides. Again, I'm going to ask, do you really have to put this level of review as something that's necessary? So it's not bad enough that you're requiring board members to have to get together each and every time before they issue a violation when it comes to just speed limit enforcement. Now, that's all we're talking about. But now you have to have a written agreement, and before we think it's going to be valid, the state of Washington says we're going to require that you go to a real official. Let's talk to someone who is the chief law enforcement official and make sure that they sign off on it too. I mean, talk about, again, being parental here. Is that really necessary? This kind of step? They're really treating HOAs and HOA members as being juvenile, as being people who don't know how to govern themselves. Yet these are the same people that voted for these legislators who are now in office. I mean, come on. If I were a homeowner in the state of Washington, I would be upset, wouldn't you? Talk about nonsense. Well, those are just two conditions. We've got two others here. Let's talk about what are those. Number 3, a third condition that must be met before you would have establish an enforced speed rule in your HOA is the association must also provide written notice to all owners describing the new authority to issue speeding infractions. And signs must be posted, number 4, declaring the speed limit at all entrances to the community. Well, number 4, I think that is just fine to be able to put a sign posted at the entrance, all entrances of an HOA, about what the speed limit is or what the parking rules are. I think that's fair. I think it's unnecessary because, to tell you the truth, I'm going to tell you, you know what? 99.5% of the time, most of the clients that I know or people that we pick up later to be clients have already done that. I mean, when someone wants someone to know and understand a rule, they want to post it. And I'm glad to see that it can be posted just at the entrances of the association and not every few feet. There was one city years ago, it was Coon Rapids, that used to require no parking signs in one association, so many every few feet. And the association was just littered with, I think they had to buy 60, 70 signs. And it was unnecessary. Well, finally that changed many years later, and they were able to pull those out. And it was at the expense. So the association had the expense of paying for all those signs, and now they were able to just put just a few because they had 2 entrances. And so 2 signs took care of what they had 60 or 70 for before. So at least there's some common sense there, so I appreciate that aspect. About the 4th thing, unnecessary, because I think, like I said, most people do that. And this 3rd condition, it says the association must provide written notice to all owners describing the new speed limit infraction. Again, I think it's unnecessary. We're talking about common sense here. An association does need to do that. I would also venture to say that most governing documents probably also talk very specifically about how rules are enacted, and they will also talk about how the board, even though they have the authority to enact rules without homeowners' input, most of them get the homeowners' input, and there is in the governing documents specific writing that also states that these new rules need to be presented to homeowners before they are considered enacted. And so part of that is unnecessary, but again, all of this because some legislators in the state of Washington are saying, you know what, you don't know how to govern yourself. really, is that where you're going with this? The second law that they have, and that is coming to electronic notice. Apparently, finally, the state of Washington, and this part I think is probably a good law. They're saying before, the state statute did not allow or recognize sending something electronically as an official notice for a meeting for a homeowners association. But finally, the state of Washington is saying, you know what? This is a form of communication. People use it. People prefer it, actually. And so they are finally coming to a point where they're saying, you know what? This is something we're going to allow. The one thing I think is funny with this, though, is that before this can take place, that says that the homeowner must opt into electronic notice. And I'm okay with the homeowner having to acknowledge, but the homeowner must acknowledge it by sending a letter in the mail. So they can't acknowledge it electronically, even though that's the way it's going to be done afterwards. So we won't receive your electronic acknowledgement as acknowledgement. It only has to be done in the mail. The state of Washington legislators, fine folks they are. Well, hey, let's take another break. Don't go away. We've got more of Where You Live after these messages.